from 5-1 to 6-6. This is the Phillies Talk podcast presented by Team Toyota. I'm Corey Seidman. He's Jim Salisbury. And how much difference a week makes. The first week of the season, Phillies looking good. The rotation 1 through 5, you're saying, okay, top 3 looks as advertised, and the Phillies can get enough out of 4 and 5 with this offense, and the defense was playing well, and really everything kind of reversed during this trip to Atlanta and New York. The Phillies were fortunate to not face Jacob deGrom in the series finale, but Jim, I think what sticks out most to a lot of people is just this team is not hitting.
No question. That is the thing that jumps out the most about the back end of this road trip, the 3 games in New York. I do have to say the first 3 games of the trip in Atlanta, and even some of the next 3 in New York, the defense really jumped out at me. I thought the defense was poor. At the big league level, man, even if you're not making errors, you know, if you're making miscues and costing your team outs and giving the other guys extra outs, you know, at the big league level, it's like blood in the water, man. They go crazy, and the other team capitalizes on those extra outs. So, yeah, I thought the defense was really not good down in Atlanta, and not good at an occasion in New York. But, yeah, the offense, 3-game series in New York was just brutal. Not good throughout the whole trip, but brutal in New York. 3 games, Phillies got 15 hits. So even a person who's not very good in math like me knows that's not a lot of hits. That's 5 a game, and only 2 extra base hits in the entire series. And you look at, you know, some of the hitters they have in that lineup: Harper, Hoskins, Realmuto, Gregorius. To think that they only got 2 extra base hits is just really mind-blowing. One of them was a Gene Segura home run. So they're not hitting the ball hard. They're not hitting the ball enough. They only scored 4 runs in 3 games, 15 hits, 2 extra base hits. Yeah, the offense was – and on top of it all, the strikeouts. 14 strikeouts in an 8-inning game in game 1 of the series, 14 strikeouts in a 5-1 loss on Wednesday night. You know, it's a good thing they got postponed probably on Thursday, because the way deGrom is, he would have just eaten them up. I mean, the way they're going. And deGrom's got that great fastball. And there's some really troubling fastball numbers for these Phillies, Corey, which I have written down here. You know, they're just not making a lot of contact. So the Phillies have struck out 121 times in 12 games. That's the 5th most. I'm sorry?
I said that's 10 a game, isn't it?
10 a game. Yeah, so they rank 5th in strikeouts with 121 through 12 games, striking out in 28.9% of their plate appearances. They rank 27th overall in the majors in contact rate. And against fastballs, they're hitting .235, which is 25th in the majors. And against fastballs, their OPS is .702, which is 28th in the majors. So maybe the baseball gods were shining upon them by raining out Thursday's matchup against deGrom, who sits between 98 and 102.
Well, you know, you look up and down the lineup. Andrew McCutchen's hitting 139. Harper's hitting 231. Alec Boehm's hitting 233. You know, this isn't the first time this has ever been said, but like, baseball is just so much different than the other sports. In the NBA, if you have a cold start, you're likely going to get to your career shooting averages. Like if you start and you're shooting 23% from 3 in the first 2 weeks of the season, odds are that throughout the course of the season, it's going to normalize. And that happens a lot in baseball too, but not every year. You know, sometimes guys who start cold and the pressure starts to mount, especially for a team like this, I would have to imagine that especially a guy like Bryce Harper feels enormous pressure. You know, maybe he wouldn't admit it, but he's largely responsible for helping end this winless season drought and this playoff drought. And when an offense gets off to this cold of a start, I mean, it's not a great sign. But I guess the other aspect of this is that the Phillies have faced some very good pitching early on. How much stock do you put into that?
I put a lot of stock in that. They have not really hit good pitching over the last handful of years, and they're going to put it this way: they get dominated. We see them get dominated by good pitching. Now that happens to a lot of teams. But in this National League East, you're going to see a ton of good pitching. That's why you can't be dominated by, and no disrespect, David Peterson's a major league pitcher, and he pitched a great ball game last night. But, man, he went through that Phillies lineup, He was a hot knife through warm butter. I mean, just you got to have some more competitive at bats, and just looks like at times they're just trying to. Yeah, you mentioned pressure, doing too much, trying to just the swings are too big. They really stressed contact down in spring training, and now it's coming to roost. They're not making enough contact, and the strikeouts are just too many. Too many. They're not going to be competitive if they don't cut that down. And you mentioned Harper feeling pressure. He spoke after Wednesday night's game, and he talked about the strikeouts. He struck out 3 times on Wednesday night. He said it can't happen. Too many for the team, too many for himself. He admitted that he has to be better. He has to be better for the team. And I think we both recognize how important he is. I mean, I've said many times that I think if he finishes in the top 5 of the MVP race, then they're going to be a winning team and make him run out the playoffs. That's how important he is. So, yeah, they need more out of him. They need more out of everybody. And I don't, you mentioned slow starts and how it can impact your stats. And it's very hard to do this because baseball is so statistically driven, but you can't worry about the stat sheet, because you're on a multi-year deal. You're highly paid. If you are on a multi-year deal and you're highly paid, you shouldn't worry about the stat sheet. You should crumble it up and throw it away the next day and start over. Worry about that day. And they need to come home from this poor road trip and start anew at home on Friday night against St. Louis. And they need to score some runs and take some pressure off this pitching staff.
Talking about if you have a multi-year deal, what to focus on, what not to focus on. Well, top 2 guys in the Phillies lineup, Andrew McCutchen's a free agent after the season. Rhys Hoskins is still playing for that big contract. A little bit of a different story with them. And, specifically in McCutchen's case, couldn't be more motivation for a guy like that. Like, he's playing for his next deal. He wants to show that he can still be a top of the order hitter.
Yeah, he's 34 and he's coming, got a 3-year, $50 million deal, which, honestly, this is not hindsight. I question the wisdom of that deal several years ago when they signed him. The length of it. He's a terrific player, had that terrific year in 19, and then he hurt his Achilles, had a terrific start in 19, I should say. He's off to a slow start. When you're a veteran player, it shouldn't eat you up. You should be able to get out of it. And, Hoskins was 0 for 10 in that series in New York, and then he had a hit late in the game Wednesday night. And I thought he had it was a good at bat for him in that he shortened up. The pitch was up in the zone. He shortened up. He sort of top-handed a line drive over the shortstop's head. One of those hard line drives that kind of dips when it gets over the shortstop's head. It was a good short stroke. Wasn't trying to do too much with it. And there you go, base hit. Bring that top hand line drive maker into it, and you got something. You don't need to launch everything. Everything doesn't need to land 6 rows up. Sometimes a single is just enough. So maybe it'll get Rhys Hoskins going that pretty good at bat late in Wednesday night's game, and he'll have a good homestand. We'll see.
Yeah, and Hoskins was off to a decent start. He's been maybe the Phillies' best offensive player so far with the extra base hits and the run production so far.
Great. He was off to a great start. 7 extra base hits in the first 7 games, tying a Phillies team record. So I'm not singling him out. I'm just saying I thought he had a good at bat. I thought he kind of showed you how it should be done. This is how you get out of it when strikeouts are racking up and everybody's swinging for the fences. Just go up there and use the bat head and like Scott Rowland used to say, when is a single up the middle not good enough? Well, when you're really struggling, it's really good enough. You get enough of those, and you get guys on base, and all of a sudden somebody does pop one in the gap, and you score some runs, and everybody breathes and relaxes, and the pitcher feels better. He's more comfortable, and it all plays into each other, and all of a sudden you win a ball game and get back on the horse, and that's what they need.
Yeah, they also need center fielder to do something of note, offensively, defensively. I don't know if you would say this the same way. Maybe this is a little too harsh, but, in my opinion, it took all of 2 weeks for the Phillies to bottom out in center field. One guy's not here indefinitely for personal reasons. Another guy's 1 for 20 with 10 strikeouts. Mickey Moniak gets called up. From a Phillies perspective, they hope that he can provide a little bit of a spark and click, both offensively and defensively, but they can't really rely on that. In most cases, this would be way too early to be thinking about trade, but Do you think Dave Dombrowski's already on the phone?
Yeah, I'm sure he is. He probably has been for a while. We knew all off season that was an area, a question mark area. I'm sure they explored trades in the off season for potential center fielders. Trade talks never die; they get shelved, but you can always bring them back to life. One phone call, hey, remember where we were in January? Yeah, well, let's talk. So, I'm sure it's been in the back of their mind. I know what you're saying when you say they've bottomed out, but I still think they have other options in the organization, and one of them is Odubel Herrera. It's just a matter if they're going to give him a look. We all know the story. They've bottomed out, but I still think they have other options in the organization, and one of them is Odubel Herrera. It's just a matter if they're going to give him a look. We all know the story. Dombrowski said that he could have brought him on opening day, but they wanted him to get more consistent at bats and get at the alternate site. So, they've run through three of them. We've seen Quinn; he's still here. Hazley's taking this leave of absence. Moniak is getting a shot. Is going to get a shot now. Kingery is still working on his swing. I expect to see him at some point. The question is, will they give Odubel Herrera a look? I happen to think has the most talent of that group of players. I wonder if they would go that route before giving into a trade. But any good GM is always contemplating how he can bring in talent to fill a hole in his roster, how he can bring in talent, how he can make turn a weakness into a strength by bringing in outside talent. So I would be willing to, bet the ranch that he's considering things and investigating things and exploring things. But his next move might come from right within the system if things don't start to turn around out there.
Can I throw some names at you that I was just looking around the league and trying to identify some bad?
You know what? With that haircut, Corey, you can do anything you want.
Thanks, man. Well, all right, let's start with Mitch Haniger on the Mariners. Came back this year. He suffered just a absolutely brutal injury in 2019, ruptured testicle, fouled a pitch off, went right to the groin, and he missed the next year and a half, multiple surgeries. But he's back this year. He's leading off for the Mariners, has experience in center field and right field. He's a good hitter. I mean, 2018, he was an all-star, OPS in the mid-800s, 26 homers. And he's a guy who's not owed a ton of money, makes just over $3 million this season. Next year's his final year of arbitration. Doesn't really fit in with the Mariners' timeline. He's 30 years old. He's one guy. I'll give you one more and then I'll stop. See what you think. Randall Grichuk on the Blue Jays. Right now, I don't think is the time because they need him. But when George Springer comes back from the injured list, when Teoscar Hernandez comes back from COVID-19, maybe a bit of a luxury there, making about $9 million a year. Perhaps the Phillies involve a guy like Vince Velasquez in a deal like that if they're taking back money. So let's start there. What do you think of those two names?
Grichuk is a guy I think you and I talked about this winter. Remember we sniffed out, there was a rumor about the Jays talking to the Phillies about Segura. Remember that day?
Mm-hmm.
And we were trying to work it. And Grichuk is the guy that stood out to me as a possibility because of the Springer connection, or Springer acquisition. The money is a concern. Is it just 1 year left?
We're talking Grichuk. No, he has.
Yeah, he's got more than some.
$9.3 million this season, $9.3 million in 2022, $9.3 million in 2023. So about $27 million over this 3-year span.
I don't know. I mean, if you could, the reason we were talking Segura that day is because the money would have been a wash, right. Close to a wash. And you could have played Kingery at second. Maybe you still can bring Kingery back, play him at second, but they're clearly not sold on Kingery's offense. I don't know that they do that now, but it's certainly, with the math and the money and the potential availability, it's a pretty good player. It's someone to keep an eye on, but I don't know that they would take on that money. I just don't know, but I'm sure it's a name that's going to come up. The Haniger name is an interesting name. What's the money there like?
Haniger makes $3 million this season. Next year's his final year of arbitration, and then he's a free agent. So he's a guy that if the Mariners don't trade him this year, they're probably trading him next year.
That would be, depending on how he's performing. That might be a name to keep an eye on. And so could Grichuk. I mean, these guys can always get creative in changing money. It's just that I don't know if the Phillies would take on all of that salary unless they could subtract some of,
Right.
Some of their own. And I don't know that I don't think the Blue Jays would necessarily be in the market for Segura. And that would be the contract I think they would try to lose. So, I mean, good names.
You have Vince Velasquez at $4 million as well. But, who knows what the appetite is from another team if Vince Velasquez is just a rental. It's not like it's a couple years ago when he was making relatively speaking, not a lot of money and still had years of control left.
Yeah. Velasquez before, it would behoove the Phillies to move that money, but that doesn't even add up to Grichuk's salary, correct?
Right. And the thing is like, the Phillies are over $200 million already. And Randal Grichuk's probably not the caliber of player that you exceed the luxury tax threshold for the first time in franchise history for, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. They've always said they would be willing to exceed the tax for the type of player that was going to get them over the top. But if center field is such a sinkhole, and maybe he'd be a consideration. At first blush, again, don't hold me to it, but at first blush, I'm just not sure that they would take on all of that money. But I still think they have options within the organization, and number one being Odubel Herrera. I think we're going to see him. I don't know we're going to see him. I think there's trepidation given the off-field issues and the PR. I think they have some cold feet there. They had the perfect chance to bring him up when Hazley departed. He came off the 40 because he goes on the restricted list. So that opened up a spot for Odubel if they really wanted to, bring him. But they went with a guy who was on the 40 and Mickey Moniak, who I personally didn't think was ready 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure he's ready now. He looked way over his head last year in the big leagues. There's some talent there. I think it would be great if he succeeded. He's a good kid. He's a hardworking kid. He's got some ability, and I hope it happens for him. So he gets his chance now, and we'll see if maybe he makes the Odubel talk moot. Maybe he shines. I don't know that he's ready to be that guy, but hey, stranger things have happened. We'll see.
Yeah, with Odubel, pay attention to actions, right? Like if the Phillies actually considered him a viable option in center field or had any idea of bringing him up, he'd probably be here by now, right?
Yesterday seemed like a perfect opportunity to me, but didn't happen. So, maybe they're just ticking off all their options before he becomes the last option. Maybe he's an option they should skip over. Maybe he's not their last option. Maybe they skip right by him and go out and make a trade, or maybe they bring Scott Kingery back. I just don't know, but we viewed this thing as an ongoing competition. The fact that they got on an airplane and left Clearwater and opened their season didn't stop the competition. The competition is ongoing, and now Mickey Moniak jumps on the carousel, and he was going to be in the starting lineup against deGrom on Thursday. Good luck. And he'll be in the starting lineup, I would imagine, against Carlos Martinez on Friday nights. So, we'll see. He had a good spring. Mickey had a good spring. He's added some strength, cut down on his swing. He's another one who has, talked about leveling out his swing, getting back to kind of what got him there, what made him a prospect in the first place. And that was kind of gap-to-gap line drive approach. He believes he got away from that, as we've heard other guys talk about. And he made that adjustment and showed some results in spring training. And we'll see what he can do with it. This is a great opportunity for him. If this lineup hits like it should, they should be able to mix in a young player like Mickey Moniak and give him a little time to see what he can do. But if other guys struggle, and if the length of the lineup struggles and they keep striking out and not scoring runs, their shortcomings and the holes in their lineup become more magnified, and the patience will run out with his quote unquote audition, and they'll have to move on to another option.
Well, 4 series left to round out this month of April. In come the Cardinals Friday, then a 3-game series with the Giants, and then a road trip to Coors Field and to St. Louis to round out the month of April. When we talk again, Gabe Kapler and the Giants will be in town. I'm sure we'll have quite a bit to discuss early next week. So thanks for listening to the Phillies Talk podcast.